Well, hello everybody. How are you getting on in lockdown? For those who don't know me, I'm Anne. I belong to St. Anne's Church. These days I can't say I go to St. Anne's Church, and I'm a reader. Now, I'm starting with a childhood memory. I would be about 8 years old, I would say, and it just dropped into my mind a few weeks ago, and it didn't seem to want to go away. So that's where I'm introducing things. I was brought up in the north of Scotland, and the house was in the countryside, and just down from the house was an area which we called the Hollow. And in the Hollow, there were trees and there were bushes. There was also a small stream. Now, in that part of the country, it's called a burn. I've been reading some books on people exploring the Amazon. And one day, inspired by this, I decided that I was going to try and trace the parts of the burn which were obscured by bushes. So I set about pushing my way underneath the rhododendrons. And shortly I came into a little mossy clearing. But in the middle of it, there was this beautiful clump of primroses in full bloom. And it must have been about 2 feet across. I've never seen such a big clump of primroses. Now, it was, you might say, a wow experience. I felt like a real explorer. I'd actually discovered something. Nobody had ever seen this before. It's a memorable experience, a wow experience, but it wasn't life-changing. You've got to fast forward several decades before that happened, when I prayed to Jesus, asked his forgiveness, and asked him to come into my life. At that point, lots of things changed. I felt rejuvenated. And another thing was that I wanted to read the Bible. Very shortly into my Christian life, I came to John 17, where Jesus prays for himself, then for his immediate disciples. But he goes on to say, I pray not only for them, but also for those who through their message will come to believe in me. And that was another wow, because I thought about it and I thought, is this really covering me all these centuries later? And yes, it does. All of us who have that personal relationship with Jesus are covered by that prayer, while he prayed while he was still on earth. I think later on you go and look at what he prayed for, which was that we would come to complete unity, that the world might know and believe in him. Now, that is perhaps a little bit more problematical. But I've been thinking that we are united in the spirit, but the outworkings of it have not always been seen to the best effect. But I've been thinking that as we're in lockdown, the churches have been shut. Perhaps no bad thing. Because now I think our unity, in a different sense, is becoming more apparent. Certainly here in the LMA of Aberystwyth, we have a united service, and it involves people from all the different churches. And whereas we would normally on a Sunday go to our individual churches, we're all watching this united service. And the gospel, the Bible has been opened, the gospel is being preached. And also all of this is becoming more accessible to the outside world, to those who would never go into church, into a church building. There is definite evidence that some people have been surreptitiously dipping in to these services. And of course, these services are going on across the country and not just in this country. And so I think that actually what people will see if they take this step and look at one of these services, certainly at our services, what they're going to see is Christians coming together from different backgrounds, from different churches, so to speak, different buildings. And they're all participating, and the message has been preached. Jesus is being praised in song, and there are prayers. We are perhaps beginning to be, through this rather strange time, maybe God is using it to make us a better witness to the world, because that was his intention when he prayed that we should be one as he and the Father were one, so that the world might see and believe in him. Now, just a little bit later on in my Christian walk, there were many things in the Bible which arrested me, but another one which I think is particularly important to where we are today and the situation we're in comes in Colossians. Colossians 1:17. The section is about the supremacy of Christ. And in that verse it says, he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Again, these words, in him all things hold together, which simply arrested me. And I started looking at creation around me, just the simple things, the birds, the flowers, and so on. And there was a certain excitement about it, because I realized that I was witnessing in the here and now the actual sustaining power of Jesus. He was upholding all things. Now, this has been particularly important to me during this period of lockdown. It's been very much in my mind that in him all things hold together. Now, we here have a large area of outdoor space. I hesitate to say garden because parts of it are a little bit wild, but we've got shrubs and plants, and we've been able to see spring actually unfolding during this period of lockdown. The birds have begun to nest. Well, some of them have. They're perhaps got fledglings now. There was a blackbird who every day for about 2 weeks, regularly, numerous times per day, went down to the nest with food. And then there have been the flowers, the primroses, they are past their peak now. Shrubs, rhododendrons, several, and they have been in various stages of bloom. Wisteria has just come out. And then there's the lime tree, which at the beginning of lockdown was completely bare. And about 2 weeks later, there's just the first trace of leaf buds. And we watched them as they developed until now it is in complete leaf. It has a lovely, dense canopy of green. So nature is flourishing, and it's flourishing because Jesus is holding it together. This is evidence of him at work. Now, human society has been severely shaken, and yet I have confidence because of what we can see, the evidence of Jesus holding all things together. I have confidence that we will come through this and be taken through into a new future, a better future, perhaps less materialistic and more God-oriented. Now, to say and actually looking forward optimistically to this new future might seem a little bit insensitive, because of course there is a great deal of grief around us and people need our prayer. But even grief doesn't last forever, and God is in even the darkest places with us. So there is a future beyond coronavirus and COVID-19. Now, I would like to end by reading some words from the prophet Habakkuk. Now, in Habakkuk's day, things were rather dark too, because the people of Judah had largely turned away from God. And God said to Habakkuk, the Babylonians were going to come and invade. But he then also gave Habakkuk the reassurance that that would not be the end. The Babylonians would themselves be conquered. And so this is how Habakkuk faces the future. Habakkuk chapter 3, and beginning in verse 16. Yet I will wait patiently for the day of calamity to come on the nation invading us. So the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vines. So the olive crop fails, and the fields produce no food. So there are no sheep in the sheepfold, and no cattle in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God, my Saviour. Amen.